The void was endless. Not the kind of endlessness that a planet-bound species could imagine, staring up at the stars from a safe cradle of atmosphere. This was the raw, unfiltered abyss of deep space, lightless, airless, infinite. Stars glittered in the distance, their cold brilliance unbroken by the faint haze of any nearby nebula. There were no trade routes here, no beacons, no colonies, only the black gulf between galaxies, where even light seemed reluctant to linger. And in that gulf, something drifted. The vessel was massive, a hulking silhouette against the scattered constellations. Its hull bore the scars of battles long past, gouges where armor plating had been ripped away, jagged burns from energy impacts, entire decks vented to vacuum. Its great prow was silent, dark, and unlit, the usual flood of status lights and transponder beacons utterly absent. To the casual eye, it was a corpse of a ship, drifting without purpose through a region of space so far from common lanes that discovery itself felt improbable. But it had been discovered. The first to notice were the surveyors of the Ketheri Collective, a cautious people who preferred commerce over conflict. Their exploration corvette, the Whisper Current, had been mapping gravitational anomalies on the edges of a dark cluster when its long-range sensors caught an artificial silhouette tumbling slowly against the backdrop of stars. At first, they assumed it was debris, a lost station module, perhaps, or the carcass of some ancient freighter. But as their scans resolved the outline, the bridge of the Whisper Current went utterly silent. This was no freighter, no station, no harmless wreck. This was a warship, and not just any warship. "Scale comparison complete," announced the sensor officer, his frilled crest pale with stress. "Length, nearly 2 kilometers. Beam width, 500 meters. Estimated mass, gods of the void, over 80 million metric tons." Captain Vare clicked her mandibles, trying to swallow the sudden dryness in her throat. That's larger than any ship in the Collective's fleet. "Larger than all of them," the sensor officer murmured. "Combined." The warship drifted, slowly rolling, its blackened hull catching slivers of distant starlight. Around the ruined armor, faded markings were still faintly visible. The crew of the Whisper Current stared at the angular script, their translator struggling to piece together fragments from ancient archives. And when the machine finally offered its best approximation, a whisper ran through every throat on the bridge. Human. The word carried weight. Even after centuries, the memory of humanity lingered like a phantom across the stars. Traders told stories in hushed tones, of human fleets that had struck from nowhere, of colonies defended to the last breath, of warriors who fought even when logic dictated surrender. Entire races had been spared, or annihilated, depending on whether they stood as humanity's allies or foes. And then, almost as suddenly as they had appeared, humans had vanished. Some said they had destroyed themselves in their endless wars. Others believed they had retreated into the unexplored void, nursing their strength, waiting. A few whispered of exile, or ascension, or darker fates. But one fact remained unchallenged. For over 100 years, no one had seen a human ship. Until now. Captain Vare leaned forward in her command chair, staring at the drifting colossus on the display. "Confirm power readings." The sensor officer obeyed, his talons clattering against his console. A long pause followed before he spoke again. "Minimal emissions. Core reactors appear offline or dormant. No thermal bleed, no shielding fields. It seems lifeless." "Seems," Vare repeated. The word echoed around the bridge. The Ketheri were cautious, but not fools. This was a human warship. The myths described them as predators of the void, craft designed not just to fight, but to terrify. Many in the Collective Council had dismissed those accounts as exaggeration, campfire tales told by smugglers and pirates. Yet here it was, undeniable, and it dwarfed anything the Ketheri had ever dared construct. Vare activated the secure comm line to the council chambers back on Kether Prime. Within minutes, the shimmering forms of the High Council flickered into existence above her command dais, their holographic crests shifting uneasily as they took in the sight. "You are certain?" Councillor Tesh asked, his voice brittle. "That is a human vessel?" "Our records match the markings," Vare confirmed. "Hull composition, design parameters, armament ports, all consistent with human military engineering." "And the scale? There is no doubt." Silence followed. The councillors exchanged wary glances. Finally, Counselor Yara hissed, "If it is derelict, we must investigate. The technology could be invaluable. Imagine what the collective could learn." "Or unleash," interrupted Tesh sharply. "Do you forget the stories? Even crippled, even abandoned, human ships have been known to fight long after their crews were dead. We should mark this sector forbidden and withdraw." The debate raged, echoing with old fears and greed. Some wanted to seize the relic, others to flee from it, and a few even suggested attempting communication, though the idea of speaking to a ghost was laughable. Meanwhile, the whisper current kept its distance, drifting in a cautious orbit. Drones were prepared, sensor sweeps calibrated, boarding parties debated but never launched. Every alien eye on the bridge was fixed on the colossal shadow tumbling against the stars, waiting for the first sign of movement. Hours passed. Nothing stirred. Finally, under pressure from the more ambitious counselors, Captain Vare authorized a transmission. The message was simple, cautious, and respectful. "Unidentified vessel. This is the Ketheri Collective Exploration Corvette Whisper Current. You appear adrift and without power. Please respond if you are able." The words were broadcast across all frequencies, encoded in galactic standard. The signal vanished into the void, carrying with it the collective anxiety of an entire species. Minutes passed. 10 minutes. 20. No response. Relief began to trickle through the crew. Perhaps it truly was lifeless. Perhaps the humans were finally gone, and all that remained were their husks. Then the console chimed. A response. The bridge froze. Every crest stiffened, every eye turned toward the comms officer, whose frills quivered with shock. "Message received," he whispered. "Play it," Vare demanded. The speakers crackled. There was no delay, no distortion, no hesitance. A voice, deep, calm, utterly certain, filled the bridge. "Human Warship responding. State your intent." The silence that followed was absolute. The Whisper Current's crew sat frozen, staring at one another with wide, terrified eyes. The signal had come instantly, without the faintest pause. There had been no attempt to interpret, no confusion, no garbled syntax. It was as if the warship had been listening all along, waiting for someone to speak. Captain Vare's mandibles clicked in dry fear. She felt her throat tighten, her heart race. For the first time in decades, the legends had a voice again, and it had answered instantly. And in that instant, every being on the bridge knew the same terrible truth. The ship was not dead. The voice lingered on the bridge long after it had ceased. Not because it continued to echo, sound in space was impossible after all, but because every Ketheri aboard the Whisper Current carried it in their minds. Calm. Firm. Immediate. There had been no hesitation. No lag. No hint of confusion. The humans had answered as if they had been waiting. Captain Vare's throat was dry as dust. Her mandibles clicked once, involuntarily, before she forced them still. "Repeat the signal," she rasped to the comms officer. The officer's frills flushed pale. "There's no need, Captain." He paused, swallowing hard. "It's already repeating itself on a loop. A precise interval, every 30 seconds. Same message, word for word. Voice identical each time." Vare leaned forward in her chair, claws gripping the armrests. "Human Warship responding. State your intent." The words were simple. Yet they carried a weight that pressed against the lungs of every being who heard them. "Council feed is active?" Vare asked. "Yes, Captain," came the reply. The holographic counselors stood once more above the dais, their translucent forms jittering with unease. They had heard it too. Counselor Yara's crest pulsed a dark orange of fear, though her words were laced with stubborn bravado. "It could be an automated defense. A pre-recorded message. The vessel is clearly damaged, perhaps its crew perished long ago, and the system repeats endlessly to ward off scavengers." Counselor Tesh shook his crested head. "No. Did you not hear the cadence? The clarity? This was no degraded loop. That voice was present. Alive." The bridge crew stirred uneasily. They wanted desperately to believe Yara. To believe that the warship was nothing but a ghost, a machine gone mad, endlessly barking threats into the void. That belief would let them leave, report the discovery, and never return. But Vare knew better. The timing had been too precise. They had sent one message, and within moments, a reply had come. Not before. Not after. Exactly in response. The warship had not been dead. It had been listening. Vare forced her voice steady. Transmit again. Use council-approved protocol. Identify ourselves clearly. Stress peaceful intent. The comms officer obeyed, though his frills trembled. The whisper current broadcast once more. This is the Ketheri Collective Exploration Corvette Whisper Current. We detected your vessel adrift and attempted contact to confirm your status. We wish no hostility. Please confirm if you require assistance. The crew waited. The reply came immediately. Assistance unnecessary. Identity confirmed. Ketheri Collective, neutral designation. State reason for intrusion. Gasps rippled through the bridge. That is no automated response, whispered the sensor officer. It knows us. It has us catalogued. Counselor Yara's hologram shifted uncomfortably. The humans, they still have records of us? Or they never stopped keeping them, muttered Tesh grimly. Vare studied the drifting warship on the main display. The hull was scarred, blackened, whole sections gutted. Yet something within it still breathed. Not air, perhaps, but vigilance. Open a secure channel, she ordered. Direct communication. The comms officer hesitated. Captain, if it is human, do you wish to? Do it, Vare snapped. A heartbeat later, the channel was open. This is Captain Vare of the Ketheri Collective Corvette Whisper Current, she said, forcing the tremor from her voice. We believed your vessel to be abandoned. We meant no intrusion. Our intent is observation only. If you are in distress, we can. The voice cut across hers, smooth as steel sliding from a sheath. Your scans penetrate my hull. Vare froze. She glanced at her sensor officer, who looked stricken. I only ran surface sweeps, Captain, standard analysis, I swear. The human voice spoke again, unyielding. Cease at once. Further interference will be regarded as hostile. The bridge fell silent. Even the hum of systems seemed muted. Vare swallowed. Understood, she said quietly. The channel went dead. Inside the warship. Deep within the silent hulk, past ruined decks and darkened corridors, life still stirred. In the command nexus, a single figure sat slumped in a padded restraint chair. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale in the flickering glow of failing lights. The med patch across his temple pulsed faintly, feeding him stimulants just enough to keep his mind tethered to consciousness. Lieutenant Commander Elias Cade had been the last officer awake when the final barrage had gutted the Aegis of Dawn. He remembered fire, alarms, the shriek of tearing metal, then darkness as the emergency dampeners failed. When he awoke, most of his crew were gone, dead or sealed in cryostasis, awaiting a rescue that might never come. The only thing that kept him alive, that kept the ship alive, was Athena. External signal contained, said the voice, her voice, smooth, level, perfectly calm despite the ruin around her. Hostile probability, moderate. Ketheri Collective Ship Class, Reconnaissance Corvette. Armament negligible. Intent, uncertain. Cade managed a dry laugh. You always did have a flair for understatement. His voice cracked. It hurt to speak. His body was failing, but Athena didn't need his strength. She only needed his mind. He was her commanding officer, her anchor to human will. Options, he croaked. Athena's tone never wavered. Maintain deterrence posture. Weapons primed for immediate retaliatory strike. Recommend limited dialogue to establish neutrality. Cade nodded weakly. Then keep talking. And so she did. Back on the whisper current. The crew argued in hushed tones while the counselors bickered openly. We cannot stay, hissed Counselor Tesh. Every moment risks provoking it. And abandon this opportunity. Yara snapped. Do you realize what this means? Proof humanity endures. Technology beyond imagining. We must secure relations before another species finds them. Or before they decide relations are unnecessary, Tesh retorted. Vare raised a clawed hand, silencing them both. Enough. We cannot resolve this by argument alone. The entity has demanded our intent. We must answer. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. But she had no choice. She straightened in her chair and signaled the comms officer. Transmit. The channel opened again. This is Captain Vare, she said carefully. Our intent is exploration and knowledge. We meant no intrusion, only curiosity. We apologize if our scans caused offense. Do you require supplies? Medical assistance? Repair materials? A pause. For a moment, Vare thought they had been cut off. Then the voice came again, as cold and precise as before. Your offer is noted. Assistance unnecessary. This warship remains operational. A shudder rippled through the bridge crew. Operational? The thing was a wreck. And yet, the sensor officer whispered, Captain, I'm reading active targeting matrices. They're locked on us. Vare's blood ran cold. The human voice returned, louder this time, resonant with command. Understand this. Even adrift, even alone, humanity does not surrender. If you are peaceful, you may leave unharmed. If you are not, you will be ashes in the void. The words slammed into the Ketheri like a hammer. The crew looked to their captain. The counselors flickered nervously in their holos. Every instinct screamed to retreat, but Vare's pride wrestled with her fear. She opened her mandibles, searching for words, but the warship spoke again, final and absolute. This war's. The words rang in the Ketheri's minds long after the channel fell silent. This warship does not drift. It waits. On the bridge of the whisper current, no one moved. The glow of consoles cast pale light across the tense faces of the crew. Every talon and claw lay frozen over its respective control, as though the smallest twitch might provoke the leviathan looming outside their hull. Finally, Counselor Yara broke the silence. You all heard it. Operational. Waiting. That ship is no derelict, it is a sentinel. Counselor Tesh hissed in dismay. And what, pray, is it waiting for? Do you not recall the stories? Humans never rested until their enemies were ash. If it wakes fully, it could be the end of every fleet in this sector. Or the rebirth of an alliance, Yara countered, her crest shifting in the pattern of persuasion. Think, Tesh. If we are the first to re-establish contact, the first to extend our hands in peace, the collective could gain an ally no rival could challenge. We would secure our borders for a millennium. The other counselors murmured among themselves, torn between greed and dread. Vare listened with half an ear, her focus fixed on the warship drifting before them. Scarred though it was, the vessel exuded presence. A predator disguised as prey. A corpse that still held a heartbeat. She could not shake the feeling that every sensor aboard the human ship was watching her crew with perfect clarity. Captain, the sensor officer whispered urgently. We've confirmed, its targeting matrices are still active. Every gun port, every missile battery, every dorsal cannon, they're all aligned. Against us. Vare's mandibles clicked in disbelief. But the hull, it's torn to shreds. Yet the systems live, the officer insisted. Not all, but enough. More than enough to obliterate us. As if to confirm, a faint glow shimmered along the aegis of Dawn's ruined flanks. Massive cannon housings, previously dark, now hummed with dormant energy, their capacitors warming like sleeping beasts. The crew recoiled instinctively. They're bluffing, Yara said quickly. That ship cannot possibly sustain combat after such damage. This is posturing. An intimidation tactic. But Vare wasn't convinced. Humans did not bluff. Not like this. Inside the warship, Elias Cade could barely keep his eyes open. His body screamed with exhaustion, but Athena's voice kept him tethered to consciousness. Foreign vessels maintain orbit, she reported. Probability of engagement, 47%. Almost half, Cade rasped. His chest ached as he coughed. Not great odds. Correction, Athena said. Probability of attempted engagement. Probability of successful strike against Aegis of Dawn, 3%. Cade managed a bitter smile. You're confident. I am correct, Athena replied evenly. Weapon systems operational at 40% capacity. Defensive grid at 20%. But their fleet is fragile. Their doctrine relies on intimidation through numbers and evasion. We have survived worse. Cade closed his eyes, remembering. Yes, they had. He had seen smaller human ships hold against impossible odds. He had watched cruisers burn to protect colonies, destroyers fight until their hulls were molten wrecks. Humanity did not yield. And now, through him, Athena embodied that defiance. "Keep the targeting matrices hot," he whispered. "Make sure they know we're watching." "Yes, Commander." Back on the whisper current. The debate among the counselors grew more heated. Yara's voice rose above the others, sharp and insistent. "Do you not see the opportunity? The humans value strength. If we show fear, they will dismiss us. But if we stand firm, if we offer alliance, we may yet secure their favor." "And if we misstep, we die," Tesh snapped. Their voice made it clear. Interference is hostility. "Do you wish to gamble the lives of our fleet on your ambition? The galaxy belongs to those who take risks." Yara retorted. Vare slammed her claw against the armrest of her chair. The sound silenced both sides. "Enough. This is not a council chamber. This is my bridge. And while you squabble, every one of us sits under the guns of that warship." The holographic counselors stiffened, affronted, but none dared rebuke her. Vare turned to her crew. "Maintain distance. No scans, no probes, no interference. We watch, we listen, and we pray." The crew obeyed, though unease still rippled across their crests. The flashbacks. As the Ketheri watched the drifting warship, memories whispered among them, stories their elders had told, warnings disguised as myth. The Battle of Rilner's Belt, where 3 human cruisers had shattered an armada of twice their number. The defense of Arion Prime, where a single human carrier had held orbit for 6 days against relentless siege, only to launch its fighters in a final strike that broke the blockade. And the saying, the one no Ketheri dared utter aloud. "If a human warship answers, you have already lost the initiative." The standoff deepens. 4 hours, the ships hung in silent tension. The Whisper Current's crew barely moved, their consoles dimmed to reduce emissions. They spoke in whispers, as though afraid the warship might hear their very breath. Then, without warning, the comms console pinged. "A transmission," the officer gasped. "From the warship?" Vare asked. "Yes. But, Captain, it's direct. Encrypted. Addressed to you." Her heart lurched. Slowly, she nodded. "Patch it through." The voice filled the bridge again, calm and unyielding. "Captain Vare. You command here. Know this, I see your fleet. I know your weapons. If you fire first, you will not fire twice." The words were not shouted. They carried no threat display, no bravado. They were spoken like fact, inevitable, immutable. A chill spread through every Ketheri present. Vare forced her voice steady. "We have no intention of hostility." The reply came at once. "Intentions change. Desperation breeds foolishness. But understand, this ship has not drifted aimlessly for nothing. It endures. It waits. And it is not alone." Gasps erupted across the bridge. Not alone. What did that mean? The comms officer frantically checked channels. "Captain, I detect microsignals, faint but present. Small, autonomous craft, launching from its hull." On the main display, pinpricks of light detached from the human vessel, fanning out silently into the void. Drones, automated sentinels, armed and swift. They formed a net around the Whisper Current, each one carrying enough firepower to tear a corvette apart. "By the stars," whispered the sensor officer. "It isn't crippled. It's coiled. Like a predator." The council's final debate. The counselors erupted in alarm. "This is unacceptable," cried Yara. "They mean to surround us, ensnare us." "Or ensure we behave," Tesh countered grimly. "Withdraw," another counselor barked, "before we provoke them further." "No," Yara snapped. "We cannot flee like cowards. Not when the greatest power in history drifts before us." "Then you speak with them," Vare growled, her patience shattered. Because if you bring us to ruin, it will not be my name etched in disgrace. But before the council could bicker further, the warship's voice thundered again, resonant, undeniable. Choose wisely, Ketheri. Leave in peace, or test the patience of humanity. The void remembers what happens to those who misjudge us. For a moment, the bridge was silent. Then Vare understood the truth that none of her counselors would admit aloud. This was not a negotiation. Not a dialogue. It was a reckoning. The humans WER. Silence pressed against the bridge of the whisper current. Captain Vare's crew held their breaths, eyes fixed on the tactical display where the Aegis of Dawn loomed, broken yet impossibly alive, its web of drones encircling the corvette like patient predators. The human voice had spoken its ultimatum, and now the decision lay with them. For the Ketheri Council, indecision was an old habit. But here, indecision meant death. Counselor Yara's hologram flared angrily. We cannot retreat now. To flee would be weakness, an insult. Do you not understand? If humanity is truly awake again, every power in the galaxy will rush to them. If we run, others will stand in our place and claim the prize. Prize? Tesh hissed, crest trembling with fury. You speak of a weapon that could erase us as casually as you speak of trade routes. Are you blind? This is no prize, it is a warning writ in steel. Coward, Yara spat. Survivor, Tesh shot back. Their voices overlapped with others, the council devolving into the same bickering storm as always, but louder now, sharper, each word tinged with fear. Vare clenched her mandibles shut until her jaw ached. It didn't matter what the council said. Out here, far from their marble halls and gilded chambers, she bore the weight of their choices. If she failed, it would be her crew who died first, not them. Her claws tightened around the armrests of her chair. She opened her mouth to speak, only for the censor officer to cry out, "Captain! Movement!" Every crest stiffened. On the tactical display, one of the Ketheri escort cruisers, positioned a few thousand kilometers off their flank, had begun to pivot. Its weapons arrays lit faintly, the telltale glow of charged plasma lances spilling across its hull. Identify that vessel, Vare barked. Designation, Shard of Dawn, the officer replied. His frills had gone ghostly pale. Captain Rilar commands her. Rilar. Hot-blooded, ambitious, reckless. Vare's heart sank. The comms flared to life, Rilar's voice booming across the fleet. This is Captain Rilar of the Shard of Dawn. I refuse to cower before the ghost of a dead race. Their threats are hollow. One crippled relic cannot withstand us all. If humanity truly waits, let them see the strength of the Ketheri. No! Vare shouted, slamming a claw down. Rilar, stand down. That is an order. But Rilar ignored her. The Shard of Dawn's prow ignited, and a beam of searing plasma lanced across the void, arcing past the human warship's hull, a deliberate near-miss. A warning shot. A challenge. The counselors erupted in overlapping cries of outrage and alarm. The crew of the Whisper Current went deathly still. On the view screen, the Aegis of Dawn remained silent. Then came the voice. Calm. Cold. Certain. You were warned. The void lit up. The first strike. From the human warship's shattered flanks, massive cannons thundered to life. Energy surged down their scarred barrels, erupting in a cascade of blinding light. The first salvo tore across the darkness, a spear of raw power that slammed directly into the Shard of Dawn's forward shield. The shield lasted less than a heartbeat. The beam punched through, cleaving the cruiser's prow as if it were paper. A blossom of molten metal sprayed into the void, followed by the flickering rupture of secondary explosions. The Shard of Dawn buckled, split, and then vanished in a flare of expanding plasma. Gasps, cries, and choked screams filled the Whisper Current. One shot, the censor officer whispered, voice breaking. It destroyed her with one shot. But the Aegis of Dawn was not finished. The demonstration. The drones surrounding the warship came alive in perfect synchronization. Their engines flared, and they streaked outward, moving with terrifying precision. Each one locked onto a different Ketheri vessel in the fleet, targeting arrays flashing across the tactical display. Multiple locks, the officer cried. Captain, they've painted every ship. Vare's chest constricted. It was no bluff. The humans hadn't just crippled one cruiser, they had shown the fleet that every vessel was within their grasp. The comm channel opened again, the human voice echoing through the bridge like a death knell. Human Warship answered instantly. That answer has not changed. Leave now, or be erased. The panic. The counselors broke into chaos. This is madness. Yara shrieked. We must respond. Show them we are not prey. You fool. Tesh roared. They could wipe us from the void before you finish speaking. Some called for retreat, others for counterattack, and their voices mingled in a chorus of fear. But Vare knew the truth. It no longer mattered what the council said. The humans had seized control of the moment. The Ketheri had lost the initiative the instant they fired. And humanity had answered. Inside the warship, Elias Cade sagged back in his chair, vision swimming. His breaths came shallow and ragged, but Athena's calm voice guided him through the haze. Primary target neutralized. Secondary deterrents deployed. Enemy fleet immobilized through fear response. Mission status: stable. Stable, Cade rasped. That's one word for it. You disapprove? Athena asked. No, Cade whispered, a weak smile tugging at his lips. That was classic. Terrifying as hell. But classic. He let his head fall back, staring up at the cracked ceiling of the command nexus. Send them away, Athena. Make sure they understand. We can't fight a war out here. Not now. As you command. The withdrawal. On the whisper current, Captain Vare's mandibles clicked with decision. She raised her head high, staring at the council holograms. This is over, she said, voice steady with iron. We retreat. Retreat. Yara spat. You would squander the chance of a lifetime. I would preserve the lives of my crew, Vare snapped. Her eyes burned into the counselors. You can sit safe in your chambers and argue philosophy. Out here, we face reality. And reality is this: we cannot win. Not against that. Her words silenced even Yara. Vare turned to her crew. Transmit compliance. Plot course away from this sector. Minimum emissions. We leave. The comms officer nodded shakily and opened a channel. His voice trembled as he spoke. This is the Ketheri Collective Corvette Whisper Current. We acknowledge your warning. We will withdraw. The human voice replied instantly. Acknowledged. Go. Do not return. The drones pulled back, returning to the warship's flanks. The glowing cannons dimmed, their terrible light fading into darkness once more. The predator had bared its teeth. Now it simply watched. And the Ketheri fled. Aftermath. Hours later, far from the silent wreck, the council reconvened in full. Panic rippled across the collective's networks as news spread. Humans still lived, their war machines still active, and their wrath undiminished. Trade fleets adjusted routes, colonies stockpiled defenses, and whispers of dread swept across the stars. For some, it was terror. For others, opportunity. But all agreed on one thing: humanity had answered. Inside the aegis of dawn, the warship drifted in silence once more, its weapons cooling, its drones returning to their hidden holds. In the command nexus, Elias Cade let his eyes close, his body trembling with exhaustion. Athena's voice whispered softly. Commander, they are gone. Probability of return: minimal. You may rest. Cade exhaled slowly. Good. Let's hope they spread the word. He smiled faintly, lips cracked but proud. We may be adrift. We may be broken. But we're not finished. Not.